Hi, welcome to today's session by rootfabric.com. In today's session, we are going to talk about loops in Python. So in Python, there are two main types of loops. There's the for loop, and there's the while loop. I'm going to start with the while loop because it's easier. And if we were going to construct a while loop in Python, we would need two things. We would need the body of the loop, and then we would also need an indexing variable. So let's set the variable I equal to 3. And then for the loop, while I is less than 10, print I and increment I. So we're going to set I plus equal 1. So what this set of statements is going to do is we're going to set the variable I to 3. Then we're going to evaluate this statement, and every time the statement is true, we're going to execute the block of code for the loop. So I is 3 less than 10? Yes. So print 3, increment 3 to 4. Then we go back to the top. Is 4 less than 10? Yes. Print 4, increment 4 to 5. Is 5 less than 10? Print 5, increment to 6. Keep doing it over and over and over again. Once this isn't true, we fall out of the loop and we're done with that set of statements. So this will no longer be true once I is 10, because when I is 9, 9 is less than 10, but when I is 10, 10 is equal to 10. It's not less than 10. So we run this and we should get all the numbers from 3 to 9. And as you can see, 10 isn't printed. So a loop in coding or in Python is used when you want to execute a block of code a certain number of times. A while loop is used when you want to indefinitely execute a block of code. A for loop is when you have a set number of times that you want to execute a code block. Just put this here for clarity. So, since we're on while loops still, I is 3, keep executing this block of code until I is no longer less than 10. So while loops, again, you generally use it when you don't have a set number of times you want to execute a code block. You just know a certain condition that needs to be met for it to stop executing. So that's a basic while loop. There are two main keywords in loops in Python. There is the continue keyword, and there's the break keyword. So the break keyword is used when you want to completely break out of a loop and no longer execute it at all. But the continue keyword is used when you want to skip a specific iteration of the loop. So break, completely break out of a loop. And then the continue keyword would be to skip specific iterations or one iteration of a loop. Indent this just for clarity. Okay, so if we use the break keyword here, let's say if I is equal to 7, break. What this would do is as soon as I is 7 and we get to this line, we're going to completely terminate the loop. So we go through the loop as normal. If I is 3, go through. If I is 4, go through. Print and increment, and then we print 6. We increment to 7, and then once I is 7, we completely terminate the loop. So we should never see a number higher than 6 if we run this loop. As you can see, we see 3, 4, 5, 6, and then no numbers higher than 6. So generally, you want to use the break keyword when you don't care about this statement at a certain point in the loop, but you want to completely break out of it. Now there's also the continue keyword, and just to clarify, an iteration is one specific instance. So let's say you wanted to print number 5 times. If you were to skip one iteration, you'd be printing it 4 times instead. So you'd be printing it one less time. If we use it here, let's say we don't want to print the number 7, but we want to print all the other numbers from 3 to 9. We would want to skip the one instance in which I is 7. So if we rearrange this, let's say set I equal to 2, and then we'll increment it right at the start, I plus equals 1, and then we have if I is equal to 7, continue, and then print below that, print I. So this loop is a little bit different. We made I 2, and then we incremented it right at the start before printing. So this is still going to start by printing 3. So I is 2, 2 is less than 10, increment it to 3. 3 is not equal to 7, so ignore this, and then print 3. Go back to the top. Is 3 less than 10? Yes. Increment 3 to 4, skip this, print 4. Keep going and going. Once I is 7, we enter into this, this if statement. Since I is 7 and we see the continue keyword, we skip all the remaining code because we're skipping that specific iteration. So because we are skipping one iteration, we just never end up printing 7. And then we go back to the top, and then we just continue on as normal. So this should print out all the numbers from 3 to 9, but it should skip the number 7. So we run. Well, print it out 3 to 10 because we changed this variable. But you see 3, 4, 5, 6, skip 7, 8, 9, 10. So again, because we changed the order of these statements, we do actually end up printing 10 because we increment to 10 first, and then we print 10. So after we print 10, that's when we evaluate is 10 less than 10. And then finally, we break out of the loop. So this is a little bit different. So that's the continue and the break keywords. There is one other thing with Python where you're allowed to use the else keyword in loops or with loops. So just like in if-else, you can think of the loop as the if part of the statement, and then the else statement will execute when this is no longer true, or if this is not true. So again, let's say we got to the point where I is 10. Let's take out the continue. So this would all print the numbers from 3 to 10. But once I is 10, we evaluate is 10 less than 10? No. So then we can execute this. So let's say print the statement I is no longer less than 10. Okay, and then we run. So as you can see, the loop executes just like before. Took out the continue, so we have the 7 there now. And once we're done executing the loop, because this is false, this executes. We execute the else. So this is added on top. So that's just one thing about Python. That's about it for while loops, a basic while loop. For loops, you have you can do a little bit more with in certain situations. So the most important thing in a for loop in Python is the range function. So the range function, let's say I had range 30. This represents all the numbers from 0 to 29. It's 30 numbers starting with 0. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 29, and then it doesn't include the 30, because that's 30 numbers. We can add 2 extra parameters. So if we added, let's say we added a 2 before the 30, this would start with the number 2 and then go all the way up to 30 not inclusive. So then we'd have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up to 29, and then not including the 30. And then if we wanted to not increment by 1, but we wanted to increment by 5 or 3, we could add another parameter. So if we had this parameter here, we would increment by 3. So what this represents is all the numbers from 2 to 30, not including the 30, and incrementing by 3. So if we were to construct a for loop to print all those numbers, we would do for x in range. This is the basic setup for a for loop using the range function. Print x. So let me comment this out. So if we if we ran this loop, you'd see the numbers 2, 5, 8, 11, 14, all the way up to the first number before 30, never including 30. So we run. Again, add 3 every time. This is what we're incrementing by. We get to 29, and then we increment to 32. 32 is no longer less than 30, so we fall out of the loop. So that's the basic way to use a for loop for a set number of times. If you wanted a for loop for 30 times, you would just do range 30. If you wanted a for loop for 15 times, you do range 15. And then if you wanted to control the different ways to manipulate, like the incrementing or the starting value, you would add those extra parameters. So just to run, this would be 0 through 14, as you can see. There's other cool things you can do with for loops. You can iterate through a string. It doesn't need to be a string. If you want to use a for loop, you could also just do it with a plain list. So let's say I had the list utensils. And let's say I had fork, knife, spoon. So I had a list of utensils, fork, knife, and spoon. This would be position 0, this would be position 1, and then this would be position 2. So again, if I wanted to print knife, I could refer to it by doing this. I could print utensils 1. So I run, that prints knife because that's position 1 in utensils. But if I wanted to iterate through this, I could do a for loop where I do this. Let's have for x in utensils. Don't forget indentation, and then print x. So x automatically refers to the position. And because we say in utensils, all we need is the x down here. So you run fork, knife, spoon, and again, you also have the new line character. So this is a way to use a for loop to iterate through a list. And then one other thing for for loops, well, before I get to nested for loops, if we go back here, you can also use the break and continue keywords and else keywords in for loops. So again, just very quickly, if you had if I is equal to 10, continue, x, you run, all the numbers from 0 to 14, skipping 10. And then if you made a break, once you get to 10, you just completely break the loop. So you don't print 10, you don't print the numbers after 10. And so you can use break and continue with loops. And then one last thing with loops, for loops, is you can have nested for loops. So a nested for loop or nested for loops they're a for loop within a for loop. So if you had for x in range 5 and you had need to indent for y in range 3, print x comma y. colons. So this is a loop within a loop, and just for clarity, I'm going to space a bit there. What this means is every one iteration of x, you're going to execute the entire for loop for y. So the first time through x, do this entire loop. The second time through x, execute this entire loop over and over and over again until this for loop is done executing as well. So you have a loop within a loop, and then within the innermost loop you print coordinates x comma y, and what this is going to do is it's going to print all of the coordinate points x comma y with x ranging from 0 to 4 and y ranging from 0 to 2. So just to show what that means, I'll run. So as you can see, the left column is the x values, and the right column are the y values. So we have 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, all the way until we get to the x value 4 and the y value 2, and then we're done with both loops. So just to make it a little bit more clear how this works, x is 0, go into the loop. We have another loop. X is 0, do this entire loop. So we have x 0, y 0, x 0, y 1, x 0, y 2. Then we break out. Then we're finished with this loop. We go back up here. Iterate to x equals 1. So we have x1. Then we go back to the y loop. x1, y is 0, x1, y is 1, x1, y is 2. Finish with the y loop. Go back up to x. X is 2. You do that over and over and over again until both loops are finished. So that's called a nested loop, and in coding it's very helpful if you have things with 2 dimensions. So again, if you had like a regular graph in math, or if you had anything that would require a coordinate system. So that's a basic introduction to loops in Python. If you are interested in anything else having to do with loops or Python, you can check out our courses at rootfabric.com. And thank you for watching. All right, thanks. Bye.